Star Wars 7x7 episode 2007. Happy New Year! It's the first episode of 2020, and we're going to take a quick look back and look ahead at various Star Wars projects, starting with movies today. And if you think 2020 isn't going to be exciting from a movie perspective, well, I have a few things to tell you. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So here we are, the first day of 2020, and talking about Star Wars movies. First, let's talk about the Rise of Skywalker. Obviously, yesterday's episode, we did a Jedi Business episode where we talked about the performance of the Rise of Skywalker at the box office and projections and whatnot. There was an article that just came out today as I'm recording it on New Year's Eve, saying that the Rise of Skywalker will not hit the domestic box office totals of The Last Jedi, that it's going to come in short, which would be a bummer, but how much do you say that has to do with, all the foo-fa-ra around the thing, and how much does that have to do with the reviews being where they are, which is, 40 percentage points lower from a critic's standpoint? That's a discussion for our Jedi Business episodes that we'll dig into over the coming weeks and months, but be that as it may, Rise of Skywalker is still doing reasonably well and is going to cross $1 billion globally at the box office by all conservative projections. So, that's still pretty darn successful. So, there you go. But really, the exciting stuff now is to talk about 2020 and beyond. It's a big question mark, of course. But here's what we know for sure. Even with the Game of Thrones guys deciding to shine Lucasfilm on for their deal with Netflix, they still haven't taken the December 16th, 2022 movie date off the calendar. This is important because that means they're still going to do it. At least as of this moment. And, over the course of 2020, I'll be checking in on investor calls that Bob Iger does with folks for the Walt Disney Company's earning results and whatnot, because he tends to announce changes to things like that during these earning calls. So we'll see what happens in 2020. But the reason why it seems like it's going to be a very active and exciting 2020 for Star Wars movies is twofold. First of all, Kathleen Kennedy did an interview with the LA Times where she talked about the plans for Star Wars going forward. The 2022 movie date was mentioned and is still in the books, and there was talk about Rian Johnson and that he's still working on developing a trilogy for Star Wars. Also, the mention of Kevin, how do you pronounce his name? One of these days I'm going to look it up. Kevin Feige, Marvel president Kevin Feige, who has an idea for a Star Wars movie, but according to Kathleen Kennedy, it's just in the idea stages right now. But supposedly, Kathleen Kennedy is going to be making some decisions about what happens next in the coming weeks, according to the article, which aligns with previous reports that were citing unnamed inside sources via either Hollywood Reporter or Variety, saying that we were going to be hearing about an announcement in January of 2020. So yeah, this month basically, that's the rumor going around right now. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, if that 2022 movie is still on the books, then we are going to be hearing about pre-production for that movie during 2020. Looking at the run-up to The Force Awakens, casting for that movie started in August of 2013, so 2 and change years prior to the release of The Force Awakens. That would mean that if it works out the same way for whatever this new movie is going to be, casting would begin in August of 2020. Pre-production work would already be underway as well. Crew would be hired for it. We would know a director, and scripting would already be underway as well. In fact, Michael Arndt was brought on to do the first pass at the Force Awakens script in, I think it was November of 2012, so actually 3 years out from The Force Awakens, and ultimately he was replaced by J.J. Abrams and Larry Kasdan in October of 2013. So they took over scriptwriting duties at that point, and Michael Arndt had given them something like 50 pages or so to work with, and ideas and plot lines and story arcs and so on and so forth. So by that measure, we should be hearing about a screenwriter attached to a script for this 2022 movie and work beginning on it as well. But there is one confusing thing that's out there that Kathleen Kennedy said, and I'm not really sure how that's going to affect things going forward. I think we still have a lot to learn, obviously, but I'm going to talk to you about that right after the break. Stay tuned. Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7. Welcome back. So, in this interview with the LA Times, Kathleen Kennedy made the suggestion, the intimation, if you will, that the Star Wars movies are going to be moving away from a trilogy format. Here's the actual quote. She says, "I think it gives us a more open-ended view of storytelling and doesn't lock us into this 3-act structure. We're not going to have some finite number and fit it into a box. We're really going to let the story dictate that." So, what does that mean for Rian Johnson? Okay, that's the thing, because it's supposed to be a trilogy. This is how it was presented. But that being said, his trilogy was supposed to be him writing and directing the first movie and then passing off the reins to future writers and directors, that he would still be involved as an executive producer, as a consultant, but that it's supposed to be a trilogy. Does that mean that whatever Rian Johnson is thinking about developing would not necessarily be a trilogy, that they would convert it out of that format? Possibly so. But it does seem to provide grist for the mill, apparently, for folks who are looking to say that they are trying to sweep Rian Johnson under the rug and that ultimately his trilogy is going to be scuttled or something like that. I don't know. I don't think so. But the way things were lined up already, 2022 was supposed to be the Game of Thrones guys, which suggested that Rian Johnson wasn't even going to be on the books until 2024 at the earliest. So whatever's going to happen, whatever happens in 2022, the fact that it isn't going to be a Rian Johnson movie, or at least by all intimations right now, it's not going to be a Rian Johnson movie. I don't think we can read too much into it just yet. But yeah, that comment about trilogies, I get it. It makes sense. And yet, the whole Rian thing, gosh, I don't know. I personally would love to see what he would do with a trilogy outside the Skywalker saga, but, time will tell. Time will tell. But there you go. That's what we've got on tap for movies in 2020 with Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and that is going to do it for this episode as well. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.